In a small village on the edge of the kingdom of Alethia, silence inhabited every corner, as if time itself had stopped among the old houses. Their gray stones told stories of generations past, as though they had witnessed the lives of heroes who vanished long ago. At the heart of the village lived a young man named Elan, his eyes sparkling with passion and curiosity, always seeking something beyond the ordinary. Every day he listened to the tales of his elderly grandmother, her voice full of wisdom and authority. She spoke of the sword of light, the sword that grants its bearer the power to confront eternal darkness. Each night before closing his eyes, Elan would imagine himself standing at the edge of the dark forest, the trees stretching like giant arms into the shadows, the sword gleaming in his hand, cutting through darkness and revealing merciless predatory creatures, beings that devour every ray of hope. As the days passed, the stories began to feel real. He sensed that each tale was not merely a legend, but messages from a distant time, calling him to become part of a greater story. Then came the fateful night. The moon reflected on the earth, the air charged with something mysterious, and silence suffocated the village. At the outskirts, a mysterious man appeared, cloaked in black, a dagger glinting with an eerie light. Everything around him grew heavy, as if the entire world were watching Elan, testing his courage. While the villagers hid, Elan stepped forward steadily, his heart beating differently. Something inside him felt no fear. Only curiosity and bravery awakened. The mysterious man spoke calmly, yet his voice seemed to pierce the heart. Elan, the time has come to choose your path. The sword will not make you a hero. Only your choices and courage will shape the hero. Elan paused, torn between retreat and stepping into the unknown. And with the cold forest breeze on his face, he realized his true journey was beginning. At the first light of dawn, Elan stood at the edge of the path leading out of the village, the gray houses and small rivers behind him, the fog covering everything, leaving behind his childhood and all he had ever known. The forest ahead was dense and dark, trees curling around the path, their fallen leaves shimmering faintly, as if guiding him along a magical trail. Strange eyes glimmered among the trees, watching, testing every step he took. Then he saw a brave young girl standing among the trees, her eyes radiating light and boldness. You seek something greater than yourself. The sword of light? She asked softly, as if she knew everything. Elan froze for a moment, then answered, "Yes, but I don't know the way." She smiled and pointed toward the dark forest. "Follow the signs of the wind and the symbols of the ancients. They will never fail you." It was Liana. And in that moment, Elan realized his journey was no longer solitary. The true adventure had begun. With each step, the forest seemed less threatening, yet more mysterious. The winds carried hidden messages. The trees whispered ancient wisdom. Everything they touched glowed faintly, as if the forest was testing their hearts and courage. Then suddenly, movement in the shadows. A creature, half human, half shadow, with glowing red eyes, approached slowly. A faint sound mixed with distant screams. Elan remembered the words of the mysterious messenger. A hero is born from his choices, not his strength. He took a deep breath, held Liana's hand tightly. We face this together. I cannot face it alone. The creature advanced. The forest around them moved unnaturally. Shadows bent. Trees seemed to breathe, as if the entire world watched their first trial. Then suddenly, as the first rays of sunlight pierced the trees, the creature slowly retreated, leaving behind the symbol of the sword of light on the ground, gleaming faintly in the morning light. Elan and Liana knelt before it. Awe and admiration filled them. It was not just a symbol. It was the beginning of a real test. A trial of courage, faith in one another, and readiness to face the unknown. The forest ahead was no longer just a place. It had become a living entity. Testing every step, the leaves shimmered in mysterious green and blue hues, each touch sending a strange feeling through the heart, as if speaking a language the mind could not understand. But the heart knew well. As they advanced, they felt the forest guiding and testing them simultaneously. Shadows moved without threat, faint sounds urging them to trust themselves, yet also reminding them that a single misstep could lead into the unknown. Then, as Elan touched one of the trees, the leaves quivered, releasing soft musical tones. Liana smiled in admiration. The forest tests pure hearts. Those who enter with fear lose the way, but those who enter with courage find it. A moment of calm settled over the forest, until ancient symbols appeared carved on the rocks. Strange markings they had never seen, each a small challenge, each symbol holding a puzzle to solve. Elan felt the tension rise. Every step now a test of faith in himself and his companion. At sunset, they sat by a small fire they had lit. Long shadows danced around them, and the wind whispered hidden messages. True power lies not in what you possess, but in what you overcome. Then came a greater trial, a raging river blocking their path, waves crashing violently against the rocks, every wrong step threatening to pull them into the depths. Elan remembered his grandmother's words, "In every obstacle lies a chance to prove your heart." Cautiously, they began crossing the fragile wooden bridge, each plank creaking threateningly, the wind trying to shake it. Yet trust began to grow in Elan's heart. With every step, he felt the river itself urging them onward. When they reached the other bank, they paused, gazing at the roaring river behind them. The mix of triumph and fear gave them a surge of courage neither had ever known. Among the dense trees, they noticed faint movement. A creature, half human, half shadow, silently watching. But this time Elan felt no fear. He remembered the messenger's words. A hero is born from his choices, not his strength. He took a deep breath, held Liana's hand firmly, and together, side by side, they faced the shadows with confidence and faith. After a tense moment, the creature slowly withdrew, leaving behind the glowing symbol of the sword of light in the sunset, a sign that their true trials had begun, and that their journey toward destiny and courage was no longer a dream, but a living reality testing their hearts. The forest behind them had not yet closed its mouth. Elan could feel it clearly. It was as if the trees were still watching him, testing his last decision. Had his crossing been a victory, or merely the beginning of a greater trial? As he and Liana emerged from the dense shadows, an endless plain opened before them. Tall grasses swayed with the wind like silent waves, and the sky above burned with the colors of sunset. Deep orange, tense red, as if the sun itself was warning of something to come. Liana paused for a moment, pulling her cloak tighter around her shoulders, her eyes fixed on the road stretching ahead. She spoke in a low voice, sharp as an arrow. This is where the traveler's paths begin, but not everyone who enters returns the same. Her words slipped into Elan's heart. He felt them settle within him, not as a warning, but as a truth. He no longer felt like the boy who once sat at the edge of his bed, dreaming of the glowing sword. His steps were now heavier, truer, the steps of someone beginning to understand that destiny is not observed from afar, but paid for step by step. The wind swept through the grasses, carrying a faint whisper, a voice that seemed to ask, "Are you ready for what this path will take from you?" As night approached, the plain gradually narrowed, until the road became a rocky passage flanked by tall walls of black stone. The shadows lengthened, and the silence grew heavy, uncomfortable, a silence that offered no reassurance. Elan stopped abruptly, his heart clenched for no apparent reason. He whispered, "Liana, do you feel that?" She did not answer immediately. Her hand had quietly slid toward the hilt of her sword, her eyes watching the darkness between the rocks. Then, a short, harsh laugh echoed from the heart of the darkness. In an instant, the shadows moved. 5 men, stiff-bodied, faces hard as rock, eyes gleaming with greed under the pale moonlight. Rusted swords, hidden daggers, and confident steps of those accustomed to seeing fear in the eyes of their victims. One stepped forward, broad-shouldered, a mocking smile etched across his face. He said in a hoarse voice, "Looks like luck sent us a warm dinner tonight." Elan felt his heart leap in his chest. Fear surged in, but it did not paralyze him. This was different from the fear of the forest. This was real, human fear, close enough to kill him. Liana acted before he could think. Her sword slid from its sheath with a sharp metallic sound, reflecting the moonlight on its blade. She stood half a step in front of Elan, her body taut, eyes unwavering. She said coldly, "One more step, and the night will show you no mercy." One of the bandits laughed, while the others circled, trying to flank them. The passage was narrow, no room to flee. Elan gripped his wooden staff. His hands trembled, yet he did not step back. He remembered the forest, the shadow creature, the glowing symbol on the ground, and he recalled the words that had pierced his heart one night. A hero is born from his choices, not his strength. The first strike came. The clash of iron shattered the silence. Rapid breaths, stones rolling, fear transforming into action. Liana fought with agility and speed, her sword flashing like lightning. Elan blocked a reckless strike with his staff, nearly losing his balance. But he held firm. He was no warrior, yet he was no prey either. Then, as the battle seemed to tilt against them, a powerful voice thundered across the scene. "Stand back from them." The voice was not a shout. It was a command. In the next moment, the tide of the battle turned. A young man emerged from the shadows, as if he had stepped straight out of the heart of the conflict. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing simple yet sturdy armor, bearing marks of old blows, evidence of untold battles. His sword moved with unwavering confidence. One precise strike. A bandit staggered, groaning. A second strike. Another fell to the ground, dragging himself backward. The rest froze for a moment. This was no lost boy on the road. This was a warrior who knew what to do. The bandit leader shouted in anger. "Retreat!" Within moments, the shadows vanished as they had appeared, fleeing into the darkness, carrying their failure with them, leaving the rocky passage to its heavy silence. A short silence reigned, thick with adrenaline, ragged breaths, and Elan's still racing heart. The young man lowered his sword slowly, then turned to them with a calm, confident smile. He spoke in a soft tone, as if what had happened was merely a passing matter. "It seems you chose a path that shows no mercy, and often this kind of path requires companionship." Liana regarded him cautiously, her sword still half drawn. Elan stared at him with a strange feeling, familiar, as if he had seen him before, in a dream or in a story yet untold. "My name is Kyle," the young man said. Then after a pause, he added, "I left my homeland in search of the meaning of true strength. Not the strength that crushes others, but the strength that keeps them from falling." Elan and Liana exchanged a quick glance. The road, the forest, the attack no longer seemed like random events. Elan felt something stirring inside him. Invisible threads were intertwining, as if destiny was no longer watching from afar, but gathering the right people at the right moment. Elan finally said, in a calm but sincere voice, "Perhaps our meeting was no coincidence." Kyle smiled deeper this time. In his eyes, a glimmer of someone who knew one thing for certain. The road ahead would not be easier, but they would no longer walk it alone. The small campfire flickered, tongues of flame dancing across the three faces. It was not just a fire of warmth, but a fire of confession. Liana spoke of her family, swallowed by darkness without warning, and why she bore the sword before hope itself. Kyle spoke of his dream to be a knight, remembered not for power, but for choosing rightly when the test comes. Then Elan spoke of the glowing sword, the call residing in his heart, and his fear of being unworthy of what awaited him. A heavy silence fell. Kyle broke it with a low but decisive voice. "If this sword is real, the world will need not only a hero, but someone to protect it from itself." At first light, the ruins of an ancient city appeared before them. Broken columns and stones spoke of a civilization that fell because it made the wrong choice. Within a collapsed library, a calm voice emerged from the shadows. "Do not touch the symbols unless you are ready to pay the price." It was Sophia. Her eyes were deep, as if reading beyond faces, a seeker of ancient secrets. She knew more about the Sword of Light and the Dark King than she should. She spoke directly to Elan. "The legend does not choose the strongest, but the truest." That night, each of them saw a dream. glory turning to shadow, a sword stained with blood, cheers fading, a book burning. They awoke knowing the road would test not only their strength, but their hearts. At sunrise, the four stood at the city ruins. Elan extended his hand, saying firmly, "I will not succeed alone, nor will I fall alone." Their hands intertwined. A vow was born. Hours later, they encountered soldiers with empty eyes, black armor, and merciless swords. The first true battle erupted. Pain fell, fear fell, yet they stood firm. Sophia said with genuine concern, "If this is only the beginning, the worst is yet to come." The four continued their journey toward the horizon, where the lands of darkness stretched endlessly. The silence that preceded the forest was unnatural. Even the winds that had once accompanied them had vanished. The four stood at the edge, staring ahead. A towering forest, its trees glossy black, leaves woven as if from threads of living darkness. Moving slowly, not with the wind, but as if breathing. Elan felt a sharp constriction in his chest. This place was different, not like the first forest, nor any path they had walked before. He spoke softly, though trying to sound steady. "Something is wrong here, as if every step we take will be accounted for." Liana did not look at him, her eyes fixed on the depth of the forest, her hand near her sword, yet with no intention of fighting. She said quietly with a calm sharper than fear, "This forest does not test swords, it tests hearts." They entered. The moment they passed the first row of trees, the view behind them vanished. Light faded, sound softened, and the air grew heavy, as if the forest pressed on their chests, seeking a point of weakness. Step, then another, and suddenly, Elan felt a dizzying sway. The ground trembled beneath him. Shadows receded, replaced by a blinding white light. A deep, calm, enticing voice spoke. "Why tire yourself? Take the power. The world will be yours." He opened his eyes. He was seated on a throne of gold. The whole world lay at his feet. No fear, no resistance, no loss. For one dangerous moment, the offer felt logical. Then, words he had heard before pierced the illusion like an arrow. "Power is not in what you take, but in what you ignore." He clenched his fists. The light cracked. The throne began to crumble. Elan whispered to himself, barely audible, "My strength is not in control, but in protection." The vision vanished. Darkness returned, and so did the path. But the forest was not done testing them. Liana suddenly stopped in front of a massive tree, its trunk entwined as if embraced by shadows. The world around her vanished. She saw her family fall before her eyes. Screams, fire, and blood. A whisper echoed in her ear. "Take revenge. The sword will give you power." Rage surged like fire in her chest. Yet she closed her eyes tightly, remembering old words. True strength is not born of revenge. She opened her eyes and whispered firmly, "I will not let darkness guide my heart." The vision vanished. A few steps away, Kyle paused. He saw himself lifted on the shoulders of people. His name chanted, cities opening their gates to him, glory shining in his hands. the voice said. Leave them. Be greater than they are. Kyle smiled bitterly. He remembered his vow. Not for himself, but for them. Honor is measured not by glory, but by those who remain with you. Glory receded like smoke. Sophia stood before open books. Secrets of past and future. Knowledge without limit. The voice tempted her. Everything can be yours. Her hand trembled, then drew back. She spoke softly, aware of the danger. Some doors must remain closed. At the heart of the forest, the four reunited. Shadows surrounded them, waiting. Elan said firmly, "We will not allow anything to divide us." Their hands intertwined. The forest stirred, then retreated. The trees pulled back. Whispers softened, and light began to pierce through the black branches. They emerged slowly, not as they had entered. They sat by a stream at the forest's edge. Their reflections rippled on the calm surface. Faces wiser, heavier. Liana said, "We learned nothing about the sword today." Kyle added, "But everything about ourselves." Sophia said, "And the next trial will be harder." Elan looked toward the distant mountains, where the sword of light awaited. He said softly, yet with conviction, "But we will not face it divided." They moved toward the horizon. Part 1 is over, but the darkness is still waiting. Subscribe now to be the first to see what happens to Elan.